Greetings, members, one and all of the Salivation Nation. Well, looking at the metals prices now, they are failing to meet resistance. Let's find out why. Yes, resistance levels that are set technically. The precious metals are kind of lackluster today, mainly because of some positive news. And they're not really dipping a whole lot, but they are somewhat. And but look at rhodium. Rhodium is up $250, a 4% increase, 4.81%, almost a 5% increase to $5,850. But really, the tail is of gold and silver. Those two metals are the primary metals that we utilize, that we understand to be hedges against economic instability. And they can be disappointing in times like this. When we think we're in a rally, then all of a sudden, boom, dead cat bounce. And that's what we'll see here today. But it is something to behold, with these metals. So let's kind of take a look at this. This is a very short article here by Todd Bubba Horowitz. Gold and silver fail at resistance from Kitco. After Wednesday and Thursday's rally in the metals, both gold and silver have failed at resistance. The action was expected. Gold and silver remain in downtrends. Expectations for the metals is to test the lows made on Tuesday. The two-day rally was not a bullish sign, but simply a dead cat bounce from extremely oversold conditions. When markets get overextended, it's natural to see a temporary reversal. This happens in every market. Usually 2 to 3 standard deviations moves will usually reverse before resuming the trend. And I think this is, a testimony to the technical analysis. It's just that the reason why I don't really get into the technical analysis is because as soon as you kind of figure out all the trends and all of the lines and look at all these candlesticks and everything that they utilize for this stuff, it's all thrown aside based off some petty psychology, that is based off of geopolitics or what have you. Some of it really doesn't make a lot of logical sense. And that's just it. You kind of get into the forest through the trees with the technical analysis, and, you don't see the broader positions and things that don't make sense, that are unpredictable. But when there's not a lot of that going on, well, then you can kind of rely back on the technical analysis, and I think this is what this is referring to. It is our view that the downtrend will continue and new lows will be made. The key here is the 1440 level. If that fails, 1420 and 1400 come into play. Gold and silver have done nothing to initiate a change in direction. We stay short until further notice. So there you have it. So there's your kind of where it is, gold spot versus the US dollar here. And we can see the moves made for sure. And very interesting indeed to see the movements in gold and silver. So back looking at the chart here, we can see I have my own little resistance levels. And they're really essentially based off of whole numbers, kind of where I have seen it stay above a certain level. And silver was staying solidly above the $17 level for quite some time. But as you can see, the bid here has now been below that $17 for this past week when we saw that really big dip. Now, you take a look into where things are in terms of the natural market and natural indicators and the technical analysis. Typically around this time of the year, moving into the Christmas season, we do see precious metals dip. And I just think in some ways we've kind of seen that piggybacked on top of what we've been hearing about trade. Now, Larry Kudlow, the top economic advisor for the president, has said that they're on the final stages of working out the trade deal. In other words, the final phases of the phase 1 trade deal. Where it goes from here, we're not sure. But even if we get that signed, and again, as I am very skeptical, I won't believe it until it's actually signed on the dotted line. There's been so much back and forth on both sides on this that it's really hard to predict and get a sense of really where we're at. But I think the general consensus is that we're optimistic, and I think the optimism is reflected in gold and silver prices here. As we can see, as of the recording of this video, it is Friday, before the markets close, about an hour before the markets close. We're seeing gold down $5, 0.34% move downward. Silver's down 8 cents, which is a bigger drop, but not by a whole lot, to $16.92 for the bid and over $17 for the ask. For those of you who don't know the difference between the two, bid is basically what they would be buying if you were to sell it. If you were to buy it, you would be priced based off of the ask price. There's a differential there, usually a dime for silver and $1 for gold. Platinum is up $8, 0.91%. Palladium is down $31, a negative 1%. 1.81% drop, making it the biggest loser. And as I mentioned earlier, rhodium is up 4.81%, making it the big winner of the day between all of the precious metals tracked here on Kitco. But yes, indeed, this is going to be something where I think with the optimism in trade, and of course, we have to also take into account what's going on domestically in the political scene, because as I have said, and I stand behind, domestic politics can play a huge part in gold and silver prices as well. And it appears that the markets aren't too worried about the impeachment hearings. Generally, this is the second day, Friday, when we had a former ambassador to Ukraine testify, which really had nothing to do with what had went on with that conversation or anything related to it. And that is the central focus of it. But most people feel that Monday's hearings were not or Wednesday's hearings were not very productive for the Democrats. And and most people have been kind of bored by it, even though they have somewhat of a viewing audience there. But so they're not quite as concerned about that, unless some big bombshell drops. My guess is probably it could make its way forward with not making much momentum on the markets. If it does turn out to be where the Democrats do go ahead, regardless of what evidence is brought up or what they ignore, and go ahead and impeach the president, we may see some activity in the markets. But knowing where it's going to resolve in the Senate, and depending on how strong of a case they make, if people don't see it as just a pure partisan impeachment process, usually impeachments are bipartisan, at least to some extent, then I believe that it may not have the effect on the markets as some think it could, because people will see through it for what it is, and knowing that the Senate will either barely take it up or take it up and expose it for what it is. We'll see how it all plays out. It is very interesting and fascinating to see how things work here domestically. Now, another thing to consider too, as we explore what happens with these metals here on the domestic scene, is gold and silver, how they react, and considering that these two coins here are the most popular bullion coins sold in the world, it's going to be interesting to see how the demand for these coins pick up as things do heat up, if it does turn out to be the impeachment goes through and they see it at least as enough of a bipartisan. I don't think that it's going to be bipartisan at all, even a few, because apparently it's not moved positively in that direction to convince any Republicans. But regardless, we'll see how that all plays out. I think it's something to consider, not only domestically, but how it affects other nations around the world, and how it can affect the markets around the world domestically. And then on the other end of the side, on the spectrum, we have how world politics geopolitics can affect us domestically here. And that's something to consider. We have Brexit, we've got Iran, we have Hong Kong. There's just a lot of things that kind of take into consideration. Those are kind of the hot spots right now. With what's going on in the world that can provide some uncertainty that can move the metals higher. But as long as there's no news or good news on those fronts, the precious metals will be stagnant or potentially move lower. And that means that potentially these price movements upwards really in some cases have been kind of a false alarm or a false sense that they're moving to stable territory. I think the drop that we saw over the last that we've monitored here, that big drop, I believe, was tantamount to saying that maybe perhaps the metals were overvalued, especially gold, but even silver too. So we make a move towards. We see what's going to happen with these fronts. Will gold hold on to its gains that we've seen earlier in the year? It's taken quite a big hit lately. But what will happen as things move up towards this fear of a recession that could be coming? We are overdue for a recession. How that will play and how that will look will be anyone's guess at this point. I believe it's too hard to really predict exactly how it will play out. Many people in this community feel the next recession is going to be the big one, and it could lead us into a recession or a forced dollar reset of some sorts. Certainly, if you look at the debt and deficit spending and where we are at and how that could spiral out of control, if you lose faith in the dollar, all bets are off. But I think we're a long ways off from that point, even though we are printing money still and all this backhanded stuff with the repo markets and the like. I just think that there's something to be said for faith. It's something that fiat, faith in the government, and faith in what the government backs as currency and the system. No one wants the system. No one wants the system to fail. So therefore, it won't, at least for now, until it's forced to do so. And that gives them time to buy in order to make changes, that if something does happen and there's some fear in the markets, well, they will begin to do things to either another bag of tricks to pull out of their hat or something sustainable like a rules-based monetary system if they're forced to do it. But they won't take it to that level until they're forced in their hand to where they have to make some sort of change and give up some of that power. Gold and silver restrains their power. That's why we hold it. So we hold these metals because they are self-evident in what they do in preservation of wealth, and it's a system of check and balances. The ultimate check and balance on a monetary supply or monetary system is gold and silver. Reimplementation of it is something that is probably being explored, even in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, where the Federal Reserve has their meeting. But nonetheless, Jerome Powell did say in a statement today, that he is concerned about deficit spending, and we've heard that before too. I think that's falling on deaf ears, sadly to say, but it is a warning that he feels that he can come back and say, "See, I told you so," and he can safely say it without any repercussions because of the nature of how really the system has taken place. And just like our foreign policy and what's going on in these nations around the world with these NGOs, non-governmental organizations that really are funded by the government, you have the same type of thing happening in the financial world as well too, especially in terms of budgets and money and all that. Everybody, it's a controlled system. It is a hegemony, no question. We have to hedge against the hegemony. There's no question about that either. Hence, why we do have gold and silver. That is our hedge against the hegemony. It's a way to be our own central banks to protect ourselves. Because when we have times where gold and silver can't make itself above the resistance, we must be the resistance and accumulate these metals at a time such as this, when it's more affordable and we can accumulate to provide a savings account. But as is always the case, I want to stress, and I can't stress this enough, to not make any purchases of anything, including gold and silver, beyond your means. Always be financially and fiscally responsible. Don't be like the government, where they can just spend like drunken sailors into oblivion. No, we must hold on. We must accumulate as we can, further empowering ourselves inch by inch, ounce by ounce, 10th ounce by 10th ounce at a time. That's right. That's the way we do it, and that's the way we'll continue to press on beyond dead cat bounces, beyond other factors that may press the price of silver downwards and gold downwards, either by manipulation, which I'm not discounting that there is some of that involved, but even more importantly, natural market forces and psychology and geopolitical events. That's what we do to press on there. So there you have it, the news of the day, which is really just a saying that gold and silver have failed at resistance. So we must be the resistance and accumulate in times like these when the prices are low. So there you have it. I'd like to extend a multitude of gratitude to all of you for taking the time to watch. Remember, I do post videos every single day, so if you don't get a notification or what have you of any sort, or somehow it kicked you off the subscription, just check back on the channel here and you'll see a new posted video every day. So there you have it. I would like to encourage you to please rate, share this video. Yes, that's right. Share it among the different platforms that you can. It does get the word out. It does help the channel out, and I very much appreciate it. And comment and subscribe.